In January 2020, Rowan Baxter burnt alive Hannah Clarke, their 3 children, and himself in a mass murder-suicide.
To put it bluntly, there are probably people out there in the community that are deciding which side, so to speak, to take in this investigation. Is this an issue of a woman suffering significant domestic violence and her and her children perishing at the hands of the husband? Or is this an instance of a husband being driven too far?
I think people reacted with shock when they heard that line.
The police commissioner asked the officer to step aside over the comments.
I'd written a number of stories about women who'd received a misogynistic, problematic response from the Queensland Police Service when they sought help.
Hannah Clarke was never going to be saved. It's a sickening thought, but one that was realised on the final day of an inquest into her murder.
The idea that Rowan Baxter was going to kill his family, no matter what we did, it concedes defeat.
Even if you have a perfect police response, we're not going to stop homicide, domestic homicide.
A coroner shed tears as she found nothing could have stopped him from murdering Hannah Clarke and her 3 children.
I'd heard that perhaps there were reasons to question that finding. And after a bit of calling around, I had an envelope, a black envelope dropped in my letterbox. I started to flick through and these words jumped out at me. Veracity and motive.
It was a police briefing document prepared by the officer who took over the homicide investigation. The document was written after Hannah was killed. It questions domestic violence allegations she made leading up to the murders, why she made them, and if they were truthful.
Or is this an instance of a husband being driven too far?
That document was the catalyst for our investigation. We uncovered evidence of serious flaws in the handling of Hannah's case.
But this isn't just about one case, one public relations failure.
Why did they send him back home to her?
You've got to be blind not to see her.
It's absolutely not an isolated case.
I found evidence to suggest that police failed women prior to their deaths. I found cases where police failed women after they died by not properly investigating those failures. And I've spoken to a police officer who alleges she was told to withhold evidence from the coroner about those failures.
I was explicitly told that we were to protect the organisation's reputation at all cost and that information should not be forwarded to the coroners.
If something more could have been done to protect Hannah Clarke,
then could something more have been done for the women whose names we don't know?
Poor decision making has led to the unnecessary deaths of people, particularly women and children.
Kate Pacina is a former detective senior sergeant. She spent several years working for the police in the Domestic and Family Violence Death Review Unit, preparing information for the coroner.
In the initial stages, we would go through nearly every single reportable death every morning from across the state, which is a lot. With that information, we would then go to the coroner to make sure that if the death did have a link with domestic and family violence, that they were aware of that.
After 20 years on the job, Kate reported a fellow officer alleging misconduct. She claims she was then targeted with bullying and sexual harassment.
Policing is definitely and has historically always been a male organisation built by men for men, and I knew that when I made that complaint that that was going to be the end of my career.
Kate resigned in 2021.
She wasn't involved in Hannah's case, but she's looked at hundreds of others, so we asked her to look at what we had found. What was your reaction to seeing the press conference that police gave in the days after Hannah and her children were killed?
Victim blaming at its finest.
In late 2019, Hannah Clarke separated from her husband, Rowan Baxter. They had 3 kids and had run a CrossFit gym together. He was a dangerous, manipulative and violent man who attempted to control what Hannah wore and monitored her when she left the house.
The turning point for Hannah came on Boxing Day 2019.
Rowan had been seeing the children at a park when he grabbed Leanna and took off.
And now he's telling me he won't give her back.
A witness thought she'd seen an abduction and called the police.
How was he acting? Or he's just
Just a psycho.
So, being the biological father, he does have a right to the child.
The officers at the scene said there was nothing they could do. The case was referred to Detective Sergeant Harris, a child protection detective, and he said that because there were no parenting orders in place, that it amounted to a custody dispute because no laws had been broken.
Hannah Clarke was already in contact with a police officer.
I've been speaking with Constable Kirsten Kent at the Carina station, and we've been in talks of whether or not to get a DVO. The only reason I didn't is because I was scared that it would antagonise the situation.
Kent was the domestic violence liaison officer at Hannah's local police station. A few days after Rowan snatched Liana, she would see notes about it in police systems and initiate a protection order. This body-worn camera footage shows police issuing that notice.
But because the children are named and you're not allowed within 100 metres...
Oh my God, you're not saying you can't, really?
For the first 10, 15 minutes, their conversations seemed appropriate.
Oh, can I just make a call, please?
Who do you want to... It's not going to change anything.
No, I know.
It won't change it because it's a police application. So.
The conversation then takes a dramatic turn.
Talk to your friends about, someone who might be willing to provide a reference.
In all my time of policing, I've never seen an officer coach somebody in what to say when they've been charged with a stealing offence.
To say you are a good dad and don't need any conditions.
Why would you do it in this circumstance of a domestic and family violence matter?
She said to me, mate, she just got to stay away from it because she'll try likely to do a DV on you. She goes, they can do it for anything.
They can. Yeah, you're right.
It's quite evident that the officer knew that what the second officer was saying was potentially inappropriate and shouldn't have been recorded.
7:16, I'm going to terminate the recording. That we need to...
It's confronting to watch knowing that little girl's not with us anymore.
Yeah, they seem to make allegations then, as I said, if the police are satisfied, that 7:16, I'm going to terminate the recording.
Do you know why an officer would turn off their body-worn camera at that point?
Well, we have guidelines and policy around use of body-worn, and they'd be activated every time you exercise a power. So investigating a matter, it is to be turned on. And I would enforce that body-worn cameras are not just there for the protection of police, but also to gather evidence and the protection of witnesses and suspects. And my view is the body-worn should be left on whenever you're doing a duty.
In your view, was that occurrence completed when that body-worn camera footage was turned off?
Well, I don't know what would have happened after the body-worn was turned off.
And that's the point, right?
That's the point of it, because I can't speak on what other interaction happened after the body-worn was turned off.
Do police coach people or provide legal advice to people when they're accused of stealing?
Well, no, I hope they don't, because that's not our job to coach people.
Well, why are they doing it in the cases of domestic and family violence?
Well, you could hear the crossover with the custody issue, so they were referring him to websites to seek legal advice about custody. That always raises its head in a number of these domestic and family violence incidences.
When a woman calls police and reports an incident of domestic and family violence, what responsibilities does a police officer have when they turn up at that call?
We have legislative responsibilities, but more to the core, we actually have a community responsibility for safety of the people that call us. And we take domestic and family violence very seriously. Unfortunately, the growth in domestic and family violence is increasing in Queensland, not decreasing. So our calls for service is 1 every 3 minutes, 546 a day, nearly 200,000 a year.
I never thought that anything like this could happen to her. She was such a, well, not stubborn, but she wouldn't back down. She was very sure of herself, and she was just a lovely person. We were really surprised when she did marry Bill. He never helped with the housework. He was always right beside her. He never left her alone with people. Some people thought it was lovely, but I didn't, because it just wasn't normal.
In November 2017, Kay's sister Gail went to hospital after an apparent fall. She died a few days later from a seizure.
I wasn't convinced that she had a fall, because I've had a fall and I thought, oh, there's no markings. She had one on the side of her eye, but I wasn't certain about that because it looked like a thumbprint to me. I thought, well, if anything, he's behind it.
That night was the first time Gail ever reported Bill's abuse.
She contacted police to say that she had been arguing with her husband throughout the day. Her husband was belligerent, intoxicated, refusing to cooperate with police, commenting, "Just arrest me, just take me."
Police took Bill to the watch house.
Gail had disclosed that she had been suffocated.
And she told them that she was tape recording his abuse.
She had noted on a calendar in her home the number of instances that she had been physically and verbally assaulted by her husband. It was only a very short amount of time after that that he was released from custody.
Gail had told police Bill had been abusing her for decades. Police assessed her as at risk of harm. As Bill walked the 3 kilometres back to their home, barefoot and drunk, he read a detailed account of Gail's allegations in the protection notice police handed him as he left the station.
There's no evidence that police took any steps to even warn Gail that he'd been told that information and released from the watch house.
He then returned home and she heard him at the front door and activated a digital recorder.
She had time to press the button. She must have thought, oh, what's going to happen? What am I going to do? Because it was too late then, and she must have sort of realised, well, this is possibly going to be it.
The tape recording that she made records him saying, if they ask me why I'm doing this, it's because of what you told those coppers. Was that information a part of any of the review of this case that you were able to look at?
No, I didn't get that information myself. But obviously the outline of those circumstances would put the victim in danger. It's quite obvious, if that information you've just told me, that there is an issue about the safety of the victim. By no means do I defend us not doing our job as well as we can. We should always try and look after victims, protect our community. But obviously in this case, there is the issues that led to the death of somebody, which in hindsight, if we could have done better, I think we could have done better. But in saying that, even if you have a perfect police response, we're not going to stop homicide, domestic homicide, because the dynamic, the intention, the motive of the offender is such that regardless of police taking police protection notices, doing our job very well, the motivation of some of these offenders is going to lead to the death of people.
I'm just pretty much done what older siblings are supposed to do with their younger siblings, like, you know, take care of us now.
She was a woman who, as a teenager, had located her mother deceased from suicide.
Yeah, she just took the role of like the mother figure. She made a lot of sacrifices for me and whoever she was around, you know.
In December 2019, police found Cardell Lomas's body in the back of a car. She was 6 months pregnant. It would later be found that her partner, Traven Fisher, had choked and killed her.
Police then held a press conference and said that both Cardell and Traven were known to police.
Cardell had a record of minor crimes, such as unpaid parking fines and drug use. Traven Fisher was an abuser and a sex offender. He had a history of intimate partner violence.
Traven Fisher was an incredibly violent man with a long history of offending.
He'd spent time in prison for sexually assaulting a 2-year-old.
Dangerous and disgusting.
Cardell told staff at multiple support services appointments that Traven was abusing her and that his violence was escalating.
She had, if I may, approximately 24 interactions with government-funded agencies in the 9 to 10 months prior to her death.
A non-publication order put in place by the coroner prevents the identification of the agencies and their staff.
At almost all of these interactions, she was physically injured and fearful. She disclosed the extent of Traven's abuse multiple times. Cardell attended an appointment with a serious injury to her ear. She alleged that Traven had tried to cut it off with a pair of pliers.
There were 2 formal risk assessments that detail Traven's abuse.
They categorised her as high risk, but then proceeded to do nothing. And if it's okay to read out why they classified her as high risk, there was a pending separation, threats to kill, stalking, verbal abuse, damaging her property, physical violence, including assaults with a weapon, intimate partner sexual violence, strangulation. These risk assessments, and that's just one of them, seem to have gone absolutely nowhere and have resulted in no care or protection for Cardell.
Cardell was hesitant to involve police.
In the way that the police have been part in history with Indigenous people,
But police were called to their house on at least 2 occasions. During one call-out, they heard Cardell say that Traven had threatened to kill her, according to the coroner's findings.
This wasn't treated as a threat to kill.
Police reported the couple were yelling at each other, leading them to determine Cardell and Traven,
in their words, that they were as bad as each other.
Police separated the pair but questioned them within hearing distance of each other. Cardell told police it was an argument and not domestic violence.
You've got to be blind not to see it.
Police logged a domestic violence call-out but said there was no evidence of any offence. Cardell's family believes systemic racism was at play in the way she was treated.
Police have responsibilities to understand and assess domestic and family violence and to take action to protect people who are at risk, irrespective of whether they can identify an offence.
Yeah, I did have a quick look at that case. And can I just say it's another tragedy where a female has lost her life in a domestic and family violence incident. It also raises for me concerns about, intergenerational abuse of Indigenous people.
Do you have a reflection on whether or not they may have approached those situations with some form of bias or racism?
There's unconscious and conscious bias. I don't think it's openly biased, but there is always an unconscious bias in everyone. When you're dealing with people from different cultures, often the communication with police in those cultures is not good because there's mistrust in the relationship.
10 days before Rowan Baxter killed his family, he was interviewed at the police station.
He had left photos of Hannah in her underwear in the back seat of his car while he was dropping off their youngest child, Trey. When she tried to take the photos, he grabbed her and sprained her wrist.
Officers had intended to charge him with assault, occasioning bodily harm.
That's a pretty serious charge.
We're just deciding whether we can just give you a notice to appear in court here or whether we have to take you up to the watch house.
They downgraded the charge to common assault and told Rowan that he was free to leave.
She's found some photos of her in your car and then you've grabbed her on the arm. So that's basically the information we've got.
When police made that decision, there was a police protection notice in place against him.
The coroner said it was a missed opportunity.
But Hannah had told police a lot more than what was recorded in their systems. After Ken had helped Hannah get her daughter back, the two developed a friendship.
It's evident that the officer believed Hannah. It's evident that she showed genuine care for what was happening and that she understood what was happening. My personal opinion is that the relationship had moved beyond being a professional relationship into more of a friendship. But that's okay, there's no problem with that happening.
In her statement to the inquest, Kent said she had disclosed the developing friendship to senior officers and was aware that perhaps she was a bit too personally involved. Kent says she was told she could continue to provide support, but must stay unbiased.
She attempted to help Hannah, and she believed her. And on some level, that's a number of steps better than some of the officers who were involved in this case.
But if Hannah is disclosing information about domestic violence, that officer still has an obligation to record that.
When Rowan sprained Hannah's wrist, she called Kent straight away.
She stated in those text messages that he would kill her and was capable of killing her.
She told Kent that Rowan had put her in a jiu-jitsu chokehold and that it was scary.
That's a disclosure of non-lethal strangulation. That's an offence. It's a known warning sign in these kinds of homicides, and police have been trained to recognise it. Several of these text messages appear to describe possible crimes, but none were logged in police systems, which meant that other officers weren't able to see them.
So that's basically the information we've got.
If it was put onto the QPrime database, that information was forwarded to supervisors, it would have then changed the risk level that Hannah and her children were at.
The coroner later praised Kent because she had identified that Hannah was a victim of domestic violence when Hannah had not recognised that herself. She said Kent had done everything she reasonably could and should be commended.
The finding overlooked Kent's failure to log Hannah's disclosures in police systems.
It could have potentially changed that course of events.
Hannah Clarke was 31. She was murdered, ambushed by her jealous ex-husband, who also set her and their 3 children on fire before killing himself.
Police never told Kay when a homicide investigation was launched into her sister's death.
We had no contact at all, that there was an investigation whatsoever. I had to call the police call line, and I just didn't know where to go.
She found out Bill had been charged on the news.
And he'd been charged with all of these things, manslaughter, deprivation of liberty, rape.
How did you feel at that point?
It was really hard.
The night Bill was released from the watch house, he attacked Gail for the last time. She recorded it on her tape recorder, the same one she told police about only hours earlier.
Does that sound like the sort of thing Gail would have done?
Yes, it does. She could be very proactive and, how do I put it? To actually make the recording after he stopped her was very, very brave, because she would know if he found out that she'd made that recording, it would have been a heck of a lot worse than what she got.
We considered playing that recording in this video. That was before I had heard it. It was a challenging thing to listen to, and I never met Gail. Kay heard parts of the recording as she sat in Bill's court hearing.
It was very hard to hear her on that recording and being humiliated and called and F this and F that.
I thought I understood what happened in domestic homicides, but I didn't hear a man losing control. I heard a man trying to assert it.
In all her life, all she's done is to look after Bill and do everything for him, and he's calling her this and that.
And he didn't just say he wanted to kill her. He said he wanted to drag it out.
All he wanted to do was to hurt her and hurt her again for as long as he could.
He hit her 105 times in that recording. He physically, verbally, and sexually abused her.
You wonder where on earth is all this coming from? Why? Why is he doing it? She didn't deserve what you're doing to her.
Police failed to protect Gail the night she was attacked. She died a few days later in hospital, and then they failed her again. The recording that Gail made recorded Bill using words to the effect that this is because of what you told.
Police, this is what you told the fucking coppers.
Did they search for the tape recorder?
No.
How did they come to get the tape recorder?
The coroner provided direction for police to return to the house and retrieve the tape recorder.
It was 6 weeks before police searched for the tape recorder. It was several months before police began a homicide investigation. But instead, a couple of days after Gail died, police sent a form to the coroner to say they believed that Bill was not criminally responsible for Gail's injuries.
Gail recorded her own death. What more do you have to do?
In 2022, Bill pled guilty to manslaughter and a string of other crimes related to sexual and physical assault. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison.
Do you think Bill would have ever been held to account had she not made that recording?
No, he wouldn't have been. He just would have been glossed over as a fall.
Wouldn't it be the first thing you would do if you're an officer in that case when she's disclosed that she's tape recording, would be to search for the tape recorder?
Well, if you're the investigator and you're aware of the tape recording, that conversation, it would be presumed you would look for the tape recording.
And the fact that police didn't in this case is obviously somewhat concerning.
Well, it would be concerning, and I'm glad that the coroner picked up on it.
The coroner decided not to hold an inquest, and in his finding he made no mention of the police failure to warn Gail.
We've had so many questions. Why did they let him out of custody? Why did they send him back home to her?
Cardell reached out to police 2 months before Traven killed her. She passed a note to staff and an appointment for support services.
That's quite a risky thing to do in plain sight, to do that, and that's how much she was seeking help from police. If you do that, you implicitly trust that and expect that someone will meet that request.
Basically, she just wants to go to her auntie's house tonight. Key 3.
The officer takes Traven outside to his car to get the keys and speaks to him about Cardell.
You don't need that drama, mate, you know.
That's what I mean, man. Like, I'm over the fucking shit, man.
Yeah.
Fuck it. Sick of the cunt.
There's obviously a little bit more going on with her, maybe, that none of us know about, you know. Obviously something going on there that's not quite right. But, you know, at the end of the day, mate, like I said, I don't exactly know why we got called. I don't want you to say something that we're going to have to start taking action in relation to DD
I want to prove to
you
and show you that I'm not that violent person or what they trying to say I am.
If you're going to say anything, we'll just leave it until we get out of here, not in there, you know what I mean? So I'll go and sort all this out and we'll go from there, all right?
Trust is something that needs to be earned in normal relationships, and I don't think there's that historical or contemporary trust that has been earned by police across the country with many Aboriginal people.
There's not much really going on here. A bit 504-ish.
504 is a police radio code. It means mental health issue.
I think we should transport you there. A, to make sure that you're there, and B, he's still outside. So just jump
in the car. I own your car at this moment. It's still there.
Well, no, you're not under arrest.
I know, but it's still
Just going to give you Come on.
I mean, you called us, mate. Look, at the end of the day, you called us, and it wasn't just to get a key back.
So the shoe's waiting in the car.
So I mean, at the end of the day, you're literally going to jump in the back of the car. We're going to drive you to Valve. It's 5 minutes down the road. At least we know you got there safe. These ladies know that you got there safe, and that's the end of it. All right, come on, mate. Let's go.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Sorry for the fuck.
You're all right.
What's the green light of it? So that's it, just don't ignore me, okay then. Don't call me anymore.
Police didn't take out a protection notice for Cardell. They did drop her off at her aunt's.
See you later.
There is no evidence police ever followed up with Cardell.
That's why I don't want no one home anymore. Because you're all fucking the house up on me.
There's a lot of examples you can use over the years when an Indigenous person's been killed or something, you know what I mean, where they just do the police, government or whatever, just do the bare minimum.
Yeah, just drop her off at the train station or whatnot.
All right, we'll sort it out. Thanks, mate.
So on that occasion, the police logged a DV call out, but said there was no offence and there was no evidence of any domestic violence. When police attended an incident in relation to Cardell and Traven, would they have had access to the information about Traven's history?
If it wasn't provided to them whilst they were on their way to that job, it certainly would have been visible when they returned to the station to enter what they had or hadn't done.
You would have to say they ought to have known the scale of that threat, and failing to take any type of protective action for Cardell, not even taking out a domestic violence order, is an omission that I would categorise as negligence.
Neighbours would later report some of what they heard coming from Cardell and Traven's house over 3 days in early December. The neighbours heard a woman crying, a man saying, "You're not worth it," and calling her a dog.
Cardell and her unborn baby were found dead on the 10th of December 2019.
In the boot of a car in the backyard of her home. Just discarded like rubbish.
In 2023, Traven Fisher was sentenced to 14 years in prison for manslaughter.
Do you think there might have been a different outcome in that case had there been a different response?
Yes.
I think we have got a long way to go with breaking down the barriers and the trust with First Nations people. And there's mistrust, I would say, in both ways. The people and the police and the police and the people we're dealing with.
Do you have any reflections on that statement and potentially the attitude that it shows that police have in their dealings towards First Nations people?
About, like, both ways, but my sister trusted them enough to do what she was doing, like asking for help and that, you know what I mean? So
I think that type of comment is a bit of a deflection, really. Their failure to respond in a culturally sensitive way, in a way that was able to read between the lines of when a victim reaches out, how they present, that type of failing is not the fault of the victim. Police are a statutory body. They're a government agency. Their feelings are somewhat irrelevant. They have a job to do. Their job is to protect victims of domestic and family violence. And in that, they've failed.
If you're going to think police are the answer to this problem, you're misleading. This problem is a social issue. You know, weak men hurt women and hurt their community. Strong men protect their community and protect their families. I believe that we do a very good job in the majority of cases, but I do accept in some cases we are not living the standards that are expected of the Queensland Police Service. I accept that. I accept that we need to change. I accept that our culture, we're on a journey to try and get that better. It's not a thing you can do overnight.
In a statement, Queensland Police said the organisation has made significant progress in relation to responses to domestic violence, acknowledging more can always be done.
There's been enough training given to Queensland Police Service officers about domestic and family violence prevention that I honestly don't know how much more you can give before they can get it right.
Every few years, Queensland launches another review or inquiry, recommending task forces, law changes, independent boards, new police units.
I believe Queensland is leading the way. $100 million to hit the ground running.
An inquiry into cultural issues in the Queensland Police Service in 2022 found a failure of leadership had allowed sexism, racism and fear to take hold within the force.
I do not believe that whether the recommendations have been put in place or not, that the culture of the organisation has changed at all.
Kate Pacina was regularly moved between investigative units in a time with the QPS. She did 2 stints with the Death Review Unit, the first time in 2011 and then later in 2020.
The only cases that were coming through to that domestic and family violence death review unit were highly publicised topical ones that were in the media.
Kate's job was to look at police actions and see what lessons could be learned. She's shown us evidence that in at least one case, alleged police failures appear to have been covered up.
So I was asked to do a review of a death of a woman, and I then did a full investigation of all the previous involvement that police had had. I compiled that report, provided it to the person who requested it, and then also gave it to my supervisor from the QPS, because that report identified significant failings of QPS officers. He criticised me for doing that. He told me that I was no longer to give information that made the police look bad to other government organisations, particularly with the unit that I was in, unless it went through him first.
And why would he have wanted you to do that?
I was explicitly told that we were to protect the organisation's reputation at all cost, and that information should not be forwarded to the coroners.
When Kate later made a right to information application to police, seeking a copy of the report, she was told the document does not exist on the police system. It appears to have never been logged or acted upon. Pacina says this raises concerns about a possible cover-up.
The senior officer in the coronial support unit would have mandatory reporting requirements in relation to misconduct or breaches of policy from officers.
That's correct, and that's what we expect. Our openness and transparency and legitimacy is something that we hold in high regard. If an officer has failed to do their duty or concealed evidence, I expect that those matters are fully investigated. I do not accept officers hiding information or changing information that is not truthful. It is not acceptable. If what you're telling me is a fact, I expect that it would be reported as misconduct.
Not every death reviewed by the coroner is taken to inquest, but the murders of Hannah Clarke and her children were identified as a case where there was something to learn.
It is also trying to determine if the response by police and domestic violence services was appropriate.
Even under that immense scrutiny from the public, from family, from the media,
the inquest ultimately overlooked evidence of police failures to protect Hannah. The inquest didn't ask what was at the root of these failings.
Don't need any condition.
And whether they were underpinned by bias or misogyny.
A husband being driven too far.
Instead, it found
nothing could have stopped him from murdering Hannah Clarke and her 3 children.
Police are the gatekeepers of information in these cases.
The coroner in Hannah Clarke's inquest relied on evidence, in part, provided by the case's lead homicide investigator. After Thompson stepped down, that role was filled by Detective Sergeant Derek Harris, the same officer who investigated the child protection issue when Rowan snatched Leanna.
That officer would be aware that they had investigated previous complaints by Hannah, and they should not be investigating their own matters at any stage, let alone something as significant as this. That's a complete conflict of interest.
You know, you could have the perception of that. Perception could be there,
but that's why we don't allow people to investigate when they've been involved in or had some involvement in incidents themselves. The perception is just as important as otherwise managing a conflict of interest.
So there is a range of mechanisms in place to actually address those issues. So if that was a perception of an issue that was brought to the attention of any of those agencies or any of those systems, I would expect that would have been done.
When Harris took over, it became his responsibility to compile as much information as possible about what had happened.
3 weeks later, he prepared a homicide investigation brief for the coroner. That's the document that was placed inside my letterbox. The document lists issues police were considering in their investigation, including whether Rowan had a defence for his assault on Hannah's wrist. It questions whether Hannah was telling the truth when she took out a DVO on Rowan. It explores whether Hannah's actions in seeking to get her children away from Rowan might have motivated his attack. So I'm going to show you a document now, and you might want to flick through to the highlighted sections. The officer who investigates questions the veracity and motive of prior statements made by Hannah when making domestic violence allegations about Rowan Baxter.
After.
This report was done after, 3 weeks after those deaths. I mean, what's your response to reading that document, to seeing the way that those officers have framed and then started to investigate this case?
Yeah, so reading it, obviously there's comment around the allegation. So in all allegations for police, you actually got to look at the credibility of the allegation, but also what defence the defendant may raise. So if they were thinking that a defence was being raised, they'd raise it that it may have been something that was open to the offender to use. So
these people are dead. These people are all dead at this point. This is 3 weeks after those killings.
Well, the officers wrote that. I don't know what was acting on their mind, the judgment that they were using.
If they're looking post-death for reasons as to why she would have made complaints, it just makes no sense.
I think police always believe the victim. We've got to act on face value. I think in Hannah's case, you know, I'm confident the police were trying to do the best they could.
3 years after her sister's death, the coroner emailed Kay a 2-page report.
He said that Gail's death could not have been prevented. Do you believe that's the case?
Oh, no, not now that I know some of the background now, that her death could, at least she could have had a chance if she'd been told about Bill coming home and that he had those statements. And it contributed greatly to her death.
Adair received a similar email, but his came 5 years after his sister was killed. Cardell's case was not taken to inquest, but the coroner had sent some findings.
That's when he began to understand the extent to which Cardell had been let down.
I really think that they thought I was gonna read it, but I wasn't gonna know better, you know what I mean?
The findings detailed some of the events leading up to Cardell's death, but did not interrogate alleged police failings.
I just think that they think that I don't have common sense.
The coroner told Adair that there had already been significant reforms since Cardell died, and an inquest would be unlikely to prevent a similar death.
The coroner felt that there was nothing else to be learned. And I think from the family's perspective and my perspective is that that's incredibly disappointing.
According to Queensland Government statistics, 1 in 4 victims of intimate partner homicide are First Nations people.
The fact that the coroner in this case said that there was no need to have an inquest, again, is incredibly distressing and upsetting for the family, but also for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and communities nationwide.
The issues you raise with me, can I just say unequivocally, they do not meet the standards of the Queensland Police Service or the standards of any member of our community. And if they've come into light, I would expect the mechanisms like the coroner, Ethical Standards Command, the Crime and Corruption Commission, the oversight bodies that we have, kick in and address that behaviour of those issues. That's what the system's set up for.
No coroner has considered the police failings uncovered by this investigation. These alleged failures were referred to the Crime and Corruption Commission, who declined to investigate further on the basis the allegations were not serious enough to result in criminal charges or sacking.
Kate and another whistleblower, who can't be named, have shown us evidence of a system that fails women when they seek help for domestic and family violence, and they have taken great personal risk to do so.
Because people are dying. These are people's lives.
Those whistleblowers say they are motivated by an unshakable sense that families have a right to the truth.
These people have loved ones. These people have families, sisters, aunties.
Because we haven't got closure, not real closure.
And they refuse to accept a coronial system or a police force that concedes defeat, that accepts women's deaths as inevitable while failing to learn from past mistakes.
Because we have an unaddressed systemic culture of sexism, racism, homophobia, and those attitudes are held by police officers. We've had it come out through the Commission of Inquiry to say that these issues are systemic. I don't understand why people don't see that that is just so important.